Yo, what is up, guys? So we're here to showcase off the new Gravekeepers in action. Got a few duels courtesy of Magus over here. And anyways, Gravekeepers at its core is naturally like a stun-oriented deck. Now, Esper, which is new, fusion card, you guys are seeing it right here, and it'll be summoned multiple times in these duels. But basically, this is the go-to card. It's the new boss monster for Gravekeepers, and it actually is really good. So, to actually get it out, we're going to just kind of talk about it while I have some gameplay in the background, but anyways, Esper requires 2 Gravekeepers to summon, and you don't actually really utilize polymerization. There's a card that lets you just kind of fusion for it. There's actually a lot more Gravekeeper support than just the new fusion. There's actually back row, as well as a few new monsters. But anyways, so it gains attack and defense equal to the total of original levels of the materials used for its fusion summon times 100. Usually that's going to be like 2,500 plus minimum. And here's another card, which is Throne of the Neck Valley, which just lets you add a Gravekeeper monster, or it gives you an additional normal summon. Now, we are seeing a Scapegoat here. That just allows you to do more stuff in the deck, because the deck is kind of boring, honestly, as far as what plays you can make. It's very, I would consider it linear. However, with the new addition of some of the cards, there's a little bit more play, but generally it's a stun-oriented deck, which is I make this fusion monster, and I don't let you Yu-Gi-Oh! That's generally how the deck works, if it's even going to be able to do that. It is a little bit slow, because Esper, okay, so it has the effect of it gains additional attack, which I already mentioned, but the effect that it actually makes it quite good is being able to make it so it protects Necro Valley and itself. They cannot be destroyed by card effects. So this card protects this card. And on top of that, Necro Valley technically can protect yourself. Also because it makes it so everything gains 500 attack and defense. And then on top of that, cards in the graveyard cannot be banished. And you negate any card effect that would move a card in the graveyard to a different place. And it says negate any card effect that changes types or attributes in the graveyard. It's not something that's like really that big. I mean, maybe like Elemental Sabers, but like, I mean, when's the last time you guys actually saw that deck, right? But pretty much making it so your opponent can't banish stuff is obviously the main draw of Necro Valley. Plus, the small amount of stat boost is not too bad. But anyways, this is the problem that I think this deck has, is Esper's like main effect is basically it protects Necro Valley and it can't be destroyed by card effects. And then on top of that, during your main phase, you can activate this effect to add any Gravekeeper or Necro Valley card from your deck to your hand. But it doesn't get added to your hand until the end phase, so therefore you have to wait an additional turn. And Gravekeepers kind of rely on their back row, and if you don't have any back row, well, you're technically susceptible to letting your opponent do almost whatever they want. It depends on the deck. Now, in this case, he's not going to be able to really utilize a lot of effects due to, well, I mean, Necro Valley preventing him from doing stuff, as you guys have seen. But this is another really good card, Hidden Temples of the Necro Valley. You have to actually have a Gravekeeper monster and Necro Valley, but neither player can special summon monsters except for Gravekeeper monsters. And then if a Gravekeeper monster or Necro Valley is not on the field, you have to destroy this card. It's almost kind of like a Vanities, but like much easier to use, I would say, in a Gravekeeper deck, that is. But basically, yeah, he's activating the effect, and then during the end phase, you'd be able to add one. So there's a lot of times where your opponent won't just be able to play at all. Okay. Next up, we have one versus the new debut ritual Necros. I forgot if this was a Borealo. There's actually a pretty decent duel here, and it shows you kind of how to counter the deck. But anyways, so Spiritualist is another new card. So if Necro Valley is on the field, you get to fusion summon a Spellcaster fusion monster for your extra deck using monsters from your hand or your side of the field as material. So basically, like I said, guys, it lets you just go into it really easy. Now there's also there's another newer card. Oh, we'll actually get to it in a second, but yeah. Throne of the Necro Valley is just like the Searcher, so basically searches out any Gravekeeper monster, so it adds consistency to the deck. Here's another new card, Gravekeeper's Cleric. So when it's summoned, you can target level 4 Gravekeeper monster in your graveyard and go ahead and special summon in attack position or face down defense position, and it's unaffected by Necro Valley. So basically this card gets you this card, which is like a 1-card fusion monster. And that's all the deck really tries to focus on, honestly, is to just make this card over and over. Now there's also another new card called Sacred Temples of Necro Valley, and while a Gravekeeper monster and Necro Valley are on the field, everything your opponent controls loses 500 attack and defense. Then, once per turn during the main phase, if you control no cards in your field zone, you get to activate a Necro Valley from your hand or graveyard. And then if this card is destroyed, you can actually set a Necro Valley spell and trap card directly from your deck, except for Sacred Temples of Necro Valley. So, this card lets you just basically control Necro Valley. I mean, the whole archetype of Gravekeepers is all about this card, and it's a little bit outdated. Sometimes they make like newer versions of cards and it counts as Necro Valley. In fact, there is a Gravekeeper card that lets you count yourself as having a Necro Valley. I believe it's like Gravekeeper's Priestess. It was one of the... it's not like a new card, but it was one of the newer Gravekeeper cards. But this is another really good card that the archetype has. But again, this is the main problem that I have with the fusion card in the first place. So he's just getting rid of a token over here. Perhaps he doesn't want to get maybe piercing damage. But anyways, Imperial Tombs of Necro Valley makes it so if your opponent does anything, you can just go ahead and negate it. As long as you control Gravekeeper and Necro Valley, you're going to be able to get rid of it. So Call of Souls not going to be activating its effect today. Actually, I think this is the Borreload one. So you guys saw it. The Utopia is actually a pretty decent card against this deck. So, yeah, like I said, you're going to have a lot of consistency with the Gravekeepers now. Definitely just being able to make this card. And, like, on top of that, being able to go, well, you can Spiritualist for... Oh, Spiritualist gets brought out by Cleric. So, like I said, it's a one card. I wish one of them was a tuner, but I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about Gravekeepers, but I just feel like the deck is a little bit linear. Also, I wanted to mention, well, in this case, it got negated. Some cards aren't actually going to be applying Necro Valley's effect because it only applies to itself. So it says cards in the graveyard can't be banished, and then negate any card effect that would move a card in the graveyard to a different place. In fact, there was one card text at one point that it said like other than itself, but they've updated Necro Valley like tons and tons of different times. I mean, if you go to their errata on this card, they've definitely changed this card multiple times. In this case, we have Imperial Tombs going to be negating the Borreload Dragon because basically that was like the out to this. If he had gotten that through, it might have been kind of difficult for him to come back because he would be setting Spy, and that's usually a slower play because you're going to have to flip, you're going to have to set, wait, let your opponent do things, and that's generally not good in Yu-Gi-Oh! But, yeah, he has the ability, he's trying to destroy this card, but he can't destroy it because this card protects that card. Finally runs over the Esper over here, and he just happens to have a Descendant, going to be setting a Spy, double Imperial Tombs over here. But yeah, the problem that I have with Esper is the effect that you get to add any card from your deck to your hand, basically, is insane, but you have to wait one turn. And if you don't have any back row to back yourself up, it's just going to be Castell, bounce this, and then you're just game over. That's the way I personally see it, because Gravekeepers, they need their back row. I mean, like, yeah, if you have one, it can definitely help out, because once you're in that position where you have, I would say, like, card advantage over your opponent, like, you have an Imperial Tombs and they got a top deck, and you have that fusion monster, your opponent, like, pretty much can't win, because you could just keep on searching out multiple copies of Imperial Tombs, and then at that point, you've got 3 of them, right? So, not the easiest thing to deal with, as far as, you know, sometimes Gravekeepers will just beat you by stunning you. Like I said, there is actually one card, this is the card, actually, perfect, Hidden Temples. This card can lock your opponent out, and it can be one of those decks where you face up against, and they just open, like, good, where it's just, like, Hidden Temples, and then they have Imperial Tombs, and then they have a Gravekeeper card out there, and, of course, Necro Valley, which, I mean, it's not that difficult in Gravekeeper deck to control the field spell plus the monster, so it's not like it's difficult to use Hidden Temple. But once this card is out, which I would almost consider playing 3 of, because this is such a stun-oriented deck that, like, if you just open up with it, you just win the game. Like, that's the way I see it. And they've made Gravekeepers much more consistent, especially if you are able to protect Necro Valley, and then the other card, the new fusion card, which is the Esper, protects itself. That should be pretty easy to just have Hidden Temples. And, like, you know, what does your opponent do at that point? They can't really Yu-Gi-Oh! At all, unless, well, they get rid of this card, I guess. But for the most part, yeah, that's basically how the deck wants to run. Solemn Strike and go ahead and negate that effect. This tool over here is where, well, I won't spoil it. There's also Assailant. This is a, I don't really think this card is that great. It's when it declares an attack, you get to change. It might just be another like target that he wanted to run. I just feel like Gravekeepers, they need like more monsters. They're kind of outdated, especially since Spy was like the big boss monster almost in the archetype for a long time. Because, like, that was one of their best cards, and then it was, like, Recruiter. But, again, Recruiter is just, like, slow. The whole archetype is very slow. Anyways, he's going to go ahead and draw into Scapegoat. He's got the Throne, so he's going to go ahead and search out a card, go into Necro Valley, activate Necro Valley, and he's got the Spiritualist. He's going to go ahead and keep that Scapegoat face down so he can go ahead and survive. And special summon some extra tokens over here, and then move on to his turn, giving him 1 token. I guess he was scared to attack and maybe run to like a Mirror Force here, or like any back row, right? But no one really plays too much back row. Or, in fact, now I want to say back row removal isn't super relevant. I remember before everyone was like maxing out on Twin Twisters in majority of decks. But in this deck, you could play Twin Twisters too, because, well, you have fodder for, of course, Spiritualist, because Cleric will just bring you back Spiritualist in the first place. So, like, you can just kind of get rid of this card anyways. But anyways, Esper going to be activating its effect, but it doesn't activate till later. So he activates Mirror Force, completely pointless because this card's immune to destruction. Same thing with Necro Valley. And then he's able to kind of set up. So I would say in a situation, again, where you have more cards than your opponent, it's kind of difficult for your opponent to play, especially since, in this case, like, his deck is kind of countered by Necro Valley, considering, well, it says that cards in the graveyard cannot be banished, which is kind of important for this deck. And, like, this point, like, there's really no top decking out of this. I mean, like, he's got Imperial Tombs, he's got the Esper here. If Esper said you couldn't be targeted, then, like, it'd be even better. But he's going to go into Direwolf. Direwolf's going to go ahead and pop itself to try to pop Necro Valley so he can go for his ABC plays, but that's not going to happen. And he can't actually pop this. So, you guys can see, it's a frustrating deck to play against, but at the end of the day, I don't know if I would consider it, like, super meta, because it's not the easiest deck to, like, establish what I would consider, like, a almost unbreakable board, but winning like multiple negates turn one. You might be able to get like one Imperial Tombs, maybe try to search one out, but since it gets added to the end phase, they just have it stuck in their hand, right? But anyways, now that you guys have seen some gameplay, let me know your thoughts on it. So there's one card we never saw, Royal Tribute, which is like an absolutely amazing card. In fact, I still think this card should be banned. But if you control Necro Valley, both players discard any monsters in their hand. So basically, they just lose everything. Like, you can just activate this and win a game. Which was, like, this was so popular during the Plant Synchro days when Gravekeepers were more considered meta. Royal Tribute, you just activate it and they just straight lose. It's really unfair. But anyways, with Gravekeepers, like I said, there's some cards like Assailant that was in one of the replays. It was dropped, I guess. I'm guessing maybe it was just a Gravekeeper monster. In fact, all the Gravekeepers are dark with the exception of Command It. I'm guessing maybe it was a target just for Allure, perhaps. But in this build, we're running 2 copies of Ambusher. I didn't really talk about this card too much, but anyways, when it's flipped face up, you get to target one card in your opponent's graveyard, place that at the bottom of their deck, and then if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can target a Necro Valley card in your graveyard and add it to your hand, and this card effects aren't affected by Necro Valley. In fact, everything's going to have that, so I'm not going to mention that. Well, there's a lot of cards where it's unaffected by Necro Valley, but anyways. So we're running 2 copies of Ambusher, just kind of lets you reset some of the stuff. 3 copies of Command It, standard for Gravekeepers. 2 copies of Spiritualist, which is the one that lets you count as a fusion, basically. And then 2 copies of Descendant lets you tribute a face-up Gravekeeper monster. The old school play, let me actually like explain this. This is like how Gravekeepers used to play. It used to be set Spy, flip Spy, go into Descendant or Recruiter, whichever one you didn't have, and then you'd have Spy, and then you'd have Descendant on board. Next turn, you summon Recruiter, you Descendant the effect, Descendant to pop 1 card, and then you get Recruiter's effect, you can search out another card. That was like the basic like bread and butter of like how they used to start out most of their plays. But anyways, yeah, so Spiritualist, 2 copies of that, 3 copies of Spy, 3 copies of Recruiter. Lets you add any Gravekeeper monster with 1500 or less attack once it is sent to the graveyard. They have 2 copies of Nobleman. So this card, when it's destroyed by battle, you get to actually special summon a Gravekeeper monster from your deck in face-down defense position, except for itself, which can then get you Spy, and then Spy will then proc its effect, and then you get Descendant. So basically, it's like almost reminds me of like not Lind. Oh, I guess it could be Lind, but I don't remember else. But there's a Dine. Dine would get back to you Lind, and then you kind of reset some of your plays. It's still slow though. It's way too slow. Then we have 2 copies of the new Cleric card. So summon. Go ahead. Get a Gravekeeper monster in your graveyard, and usually it's going to be this, so it's a 1 card, again, fusion. 3 copies of Allure, 1 tribute, 2 copies of Stell. So Stell targets 2 Gravekeeper monsters in your graveyard. You can add both of them to your hand, and it's unaffected by Necro Valley. Very good card. Easy pluses. Throw in Necro Valley, it's the Searcher, and then also, immediately after this effect resolves, you get to normal summon a Gravekeeper monster. So it could kind of help with some link plays, but Scapegoat's going to really help you out with some link plays. It just lets you push a little bit more aggressive when the deck is a very passive and slow. More linear deck, this adds a little bit more options. Here we're playing 1 Hidden Temples. I don't know, I feel like at the end of the day, this is one of the best stun cards that Gravekeepers has, and now the deck has much more consistency with, I don't know, being able to search out whatever card you want, which can help you have just amazing amounts of consistency with Necro Valley plus another Gravekeeper monster. And then we have 3 copies of Necro Valley, 3 copies of the Sacred Temple, 3 Solemn Strikes, 3 Imperial Tombs, 2 copies of Esper, 1 Dark Rebellion, number 41, Castell, Saryuja, Unicorn, Phoenix, Radiant, 2 copies of that, 2 copies of Apprentice Witchling, 2 copies of Link Spider, and 1 Link Reba. I don't really feel like the extra deck is really that necessary. Having cards like this are like really like good, but the rest of the cards, well, these are obviously for Scapegoat, but I would still run Borreload because I think that card deals with like problematic like boss monsters. You can't do anything to me, those kinds of things. But anyways, that's the Gravekeeper, guys. Thank you, Magus, for sending in the replays and showcasing off your build. If you guys have any suggestions for the deck or what you would change, let me know in the comment section below. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button to see more new Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks in action, just like the new Gravekeepers that you guys saw. If you guys got any cool replays, feel free to go ahead and send them in at azneyesreplays@gmail.com. Thanks for watching, and I am signing out.